Just a quick reminder, we'll be collecting your evaluation forms later. And if you haven't signed the attendance sheets, please do so outside during the break. Okay, so this is the parallel session 5A. This is a roundtable discussion on promoting trade to enhance connectivity in the Pacific. And we'll be focusing on the role of maritime transport and digital connectivity. Chairing this session is, I'm working with ADB, my former boss at the ADB, Arjun Goswami. He holds several degrees in law, modern history, and financial management. He has worked previously in the Southeast Asia Department and extensively on regional cooperation. So right now, he's the technical advisor for regional cooperation and integration for the Economic Research and Regional Cooperation Department. And I think they got a mandate to start working more intensively for regional cooperation in the Pacific. So without any further ado, I give you Mr. Arjun Goswami.
Thanks very much. I realize this is the post-lunch slot, always challenging, and thank you very much for coming and giving us this opportunity to have a dialogue with you. Connectivity, I think, I'll just say a few words and then introduce the panel and then ask them to speak to you for a while, and then we'll open up for questions. That's the way we'll proceed. Just a few words from me at the beginning. I think at the start, in the opening session, the view was rightly that connectivity should be a key theme for this specific update conference. And of course, it's a key part of regionalism. When we think of regional cooperation and integration in the region, it has 3 or 4 components to it, of which connectivity is one, but a second component is competitiveness, which is that after you've connected up markets, what do you do with those connected markets? Do you have flows of trade and investment and labor which flow across those connected markets efficiently? Can people and businesses take advantages of those flows? So that's the second element, really. And the third element, of course, is regional public goods, and you've heard so much discussion during the conference of climate change and other impacts and collective action necessary to underpin that. But today in this session, we'll focus on the connectivity part, and in a way, the view that we're espousing here is that connectivity is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. It's designed to allow those benefits to flow. And how do we procure those? And in this session, I'm hoping that what you will hear are perspectives about old connectivity, or if you prefer, traditional connectivity, which is maritime transport and maritime trade. And then you will hear about ICT connectivity. If you attended Maria Malay's session, which she chaired, they spoke about ICT infrastructure. In this session, we'll be talking about how that ICT infrastructure could be used for purposes of digital trade and e-commerce. Those are really the key themes. And I think you have the bios of the members of this panel, so I won't take a lot of time to introduce them except to say a few words. Deborah Elms, on my right, is the executive director of the Asian Trade Center and a senior fellow in Singapore's Ministry of Trade and Industry Academy. And importantly, she's probably the person who might have traveled furthest for this conference, because she's come from the US. Just tells you how important you are. And the handsome man, now I'm going to be in trouble because I didn't call the women beautiful, but the handsome man on the far right is Aranda Kotalwala. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Solomon Islands Port Authority, and prior to that, Chief Operating Officer at the Fiji Ports Authority. He has huge experience of the maritime sector in a very real sense. On the far left, we have Michelle Curran. She's the Communications Manager of Grow Pacific e-commerce e-commerce training program in the Pacific Cooperation Foundation, and she's a journalist by training, but she's been fulfilling the role of communications manager for PCF. And last but certainly not least, my very distinguished colleague to my immediate left, and I don't want anything from her, I'm just Maria Malai. She's the Senior Country Coordination Officer for the Extended Mission to Samoa. But her title in the ADB aside, she brings quite a unique combination of deep experience of the Pacific with hands-on experience of ICT infrastructure, projects, and technical assistance. So with that, my boring voice will end, and their more interesting voice will begin. By the way, in the evaluation forms, you know, the others won't have said anything to you. Make sure there's a special box for us which says how great we were. Okay. With that, maybe we'll start with Aranda. Gentleman first.
All right, thank you, Chair, and of actually my fellow speakers. Actually, I have got actually a set of profound speakers. Actually, you know, like on my left, and okay, I mean the topic today. Actually, you know, the navigating actually through the evolving nature of connectivity in the Pacific. It's quite an interesting topic, and I like to actually put some thoughts in front of you. Actually, from a maritime perspective, of course. The profound speakers actually on my left actually will further elaborate on the other aspect of ICT. But from a maritime perspective, I actually see ICT as one of the greatest enablers of, you know, the operational efficiency, cost efficiency, service quality. I mean, those are actually some of the things that I'm looking at, you know, from a maritime perspective as the key enabler actually, you know, I mean ICT, I mean, and also its impact in the maritime setup. Now, if you look at the ICT is actually more than in the maritime trade in the Pacific. I believe actually it's more than connectivity. I mean, today actually we are looking at connectivity, but I believe, you know, okay, more than the voice communication or the internet internet connectivity, it goes far beyond. I mean, of promoting, you know, interoperability actually within the organizations, within the country, and also actually within the region as well. And also actually, you know, I mean, looking at, you know, the current level of infrastructure that we have, of course, we have a long way to go actually, more than the connectivity. So, the reasons actually, from a maritime perspective, as far as actually I can see, now there are lots of ways that we can improve, and you know, from the current level of infrastructure, and also the understanding that we have how ICT can help and also actually enable, and also to have a huge impact on the efficiency of the port. I mean, looking at the efficiency, I really want to talk on, as I stated earlier, the operational efficiency of the port, and how fast we can turn around the vessels. That's one of the key aspects that we are looking at, and how, to what extent that we can give a superb quality of service actually to our customers. That means all stakeholders connected to the ports, and also actually the other business entities, plus the cost efficiency, how we can drive cost efficiency through ICT. So these are some of the key areas that I would like to talk about, and as well as actually I believe actually there will be more contribution actually from the profound speakers with me, and also we will leave the floor open for any other questions and how that we really want to look at ICT in the Pacific region. And also, like, you know, while talking about the connectivity, and also actually we understand that we need to understand that we need navigate safely, because it's all about navigation from a maritime perspective. I believe actually the connectivity and also the navigating safely within the ICT infrastructure. That's talking about the ICT and also its navigability actually in the region. There are a few areas, of course, we are still, are very speculative. Again, actually, ICT, its use within the infrastructure, within the port setup, and also, we are also actually quite speculative, like, should we use it or not actually when it comes to payments and cybersecurity, and how safe is actually the ICT in the, in paying, the dues, the port dues, any other actually customs dues and all that. So, there are a lot of elements that we really need to address when it comes to ICT in the Pacific. But of course, actually, I believe in the rest of the world, and especially like in the West, and also in the Europe and especially in the US, there's a lot more improvements. But the level of actually the penetration of ICT into the Pacific is still actually, I believe, from my point of view, and there's a long way to go. There are a lot of improvements that we need to do. But of course, if we do that, looking at our remoteness, at the moment, that's one of the effective enablers that we can basically get ourselves connected to the rest of the world, and our ports can become far more efficient, far more connected, and we cannot achieve greater level of cost efficiency, greater level of service quality actually within the region if we navigate actually effectively through the ICT. So that's what I really want to to keep it ahead with you, and also actually I will leave the floor for any other questions and answers from me. So I will actually pass the mic to my other speakers actually to talk more about. But I would like to actually answer any questions with regard to the ICT actually, and how it can affect and also impact the maritime trade in the Pacific, and how we can navigate effectively through the improved ICT connectivity in the Pacific. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe I'll ask Debbie Elms to go next and speak to ICT infrastructure's use in terms of digital trade and e-commerce. Debbie?
Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here. I have been talking about e-commerce and digital trade for quite some time, and have been working especially all across Asia, but I have never been in the Pacific Island states, so this is very interesting for me. What's particularly interesting for me is that when we look at e-commerce and digital trade, we normally say that this is a great opportunity because it allows anyone from anywhere to become a multinational, micro-multinational, all on your own, because you can now find your first customer anywhere in the globe. So you might argue actually that the Pacific Islands should be the poster child for e-commerce and digital trade, because you are remote and relatively small, and therefore if you want to engage in trade, this should be the place that is most active actually in many ways in doing e-commerce or digital trade and digital services. So what is surprising is that this is not happening. Okay, this is odd. Why is it not happening? I thought that it was because you had a lack of access, that the problem was we just didn't have internet access for most citizens. That does not seem to be the case. Now, it's true that it's not perfect, it's not ideal, it's not cost effective in some places, access is sporadic, but the issue does not seem to be a lack of access. This is peculiar. So if we have general access to internet, why are we not using it? Or what are you using it for? It should not be the case that we are wiring up the Pacific Islands so that you can all watch cat videos on YouTube. That is not the purpose, in my view, of wiring up the Pacific Islands to one another. Part of it should be to enable citizens and firms to engage in trade with a much larger community than the community that you have in your respective states. So what is the problem? Now, part of the challenge that you have, of course, is that your cost structure is very high. The cost structure for lots of things, transportation, the cost structure in general. So you cannot engage in trade in goods on low-value products. This is going to be problematic. You are going to have a very hard time being competitive in e-commerce for low-value goods. But you should be competitive, I think, in higher value goods, especially higher value goods. We heard this morning from one of the speakers about cocoa products. cocoa beans, chocolate bars eventually, although that's a tough one for a variety of reasons that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with your foreign partners. But cocoa beans, pepper products, I would think there should be a big market somewhere for high-value tropical beauty products, soaps, lotions, whatever, potentially for especially the clothing. You have some fantastic clothing products, some handicraft issues. Those higher value products should be desirable in e-commerce goods markets broadly. I don't know why those are not being sold, but they should be sold. Another thing that you guys should be highly competitive in, I would think, are digital services. So we, in Asian Trade Center in Singapore, we have a lot of our stuff being done right now, graphic design and so forth, out of places like Pakistan. There is no reason that I could think of why Pacific Islanders cannot provide digital services, graphic design, landscape architecture, whatever, all kinds of services from the Pacific Islands to everywhere else. With one notable exception, which is you are stuck with a payment system that does not work for you. So one thing that clearly needs to be sorted out, and it needs to be sorted out immediately, and it needs to be sorted out regionally, is you have got to figure out how to get payments, e-payments sorted so that someone could actually order something from you, or you could order something from a neighboring island or whatever, because until that is sorted, you're in trouble. But let me give you one thing that could be done that I don't see, at least I did not see when I started looking for this. One way to get around the payments problem that still allows you to do e-commerce services that I'm not seeing, I don't know why I'm not seeing it, but I'm not seeing it. You could be offering up digital services to inbound tourists. So what I don't see in the Pacific Islands, which I see everywhere else in Asia, I don't see people and small firms offering things like homestays, cooking classes, personalized tour offerings, surfing classes, motor scooter tours of my particular island or whatever. Those kinds of firms offering those tour services that could be delivered online to tourists who are coming in, who then could pay when they arrive here. This gets around the payments problem. They arrive, they've already paid for, or at least they've already reserved those services. They arrive, they pay you in cash when they arrive. Those services don't seem to be marketed. And I don't understand why those services don't seem to be marketed to tourists who are inbound into all of the various places around this region. This seems like a natural thing. I don't know what the problem is. And it should not require any government intervention. It should not require capacity building. There are lots of websites and free tools that are available to help companies create their own beautiful websites, their own all kinds of tools, analytics, et cetera, to help you figure out how to make your message be picked up by inbound tourists. So there's a lot of opportunities, it seems to me, to take advantage of the digital world that seems to be missing here. And again, I'm a little puzzled by why. The payments thing is clearly a challenge, needs to be sorted out. There needs to be some effort to make sure that the packaging, the marketing, et cetera, on goods matches the right marketplace. Because you're only going to go for high value things, because you're not going to be able to get past the cost structure on low value things. But there should be some way to be cooperative and make money on high value products, and there should absolutely be a way for you to engage on e-services of all kinds, digital services of all kinds. And I'm not sure why this doesn't seem to be happening. And I would encourage you, now that you have an ICT infrastructure that at least is there, to start moving in that direction, because this is a set of opportunities that are available to current people who are here and to folks who are coming back, who just can set up all kinds of companies. They may not become the next Google, but that's not what you need to do. What you need are jobs that are available for people who are here, that can expand, that can do all kinds of interesting and innovative things. That's the promise of e-commerce and digital trade, and I'm not quite certain why that promise hasn't been picked up or doesn't seem to have been picked up. Maybe I'm missing something, which I freely admit I might be missing. But that, it seems to me, to be something that should be seized upon in a way that I am not observing. And instead, I'm hearing a lot of, somebody other than me should be taking responsibility for this. And I think that's a bit odd. So I would like to encourage all of you to move into the e-commerce and digital space, because this should be the poster child for success stories in e-commerce, and especially for digital services. Both outbound, providing, again, graphic design to somebody sitting in wherever, and inbound for people who are coming to the islands who need practical local solutions to whatever their issues are. Neither one of those seems to be working as well as it ought to be, and I think that it should be now. Doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to have access to every last human being in the Pacific Islands. You just need to get started, and I encourage you to do so soon. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Maybe I'll ask Maria to carry on the conversation.
Thank you. And thank you also, Arjun, for very interesting introduction. I threatened him that I would speak in Samoan if he does anything, if he somehow changes the way he's going to run this. So I think that's why he's been very nice. Anyways, one of the beauty of actually if you read my bio, I'm actually a sort of like a management, public finance management, reforms kind of person. I'm not an ICT specialist. I do renewable energy, so the presentation that was done this morning, I could probably do it with my eyes closed. And one of the other areas that I've sort of like gotten into since moving back to Samoa is ports. We've got a pipeline ports project, and that's why it's interesting, like this particular topic, because that issue has come up. I mean, and identifying the constraints, as Aranda has already said, is something that we're looking at trying to fix in Samoa with the infrastructure. One of the biggest, I think, our remoteness is the biggest challenge, in that it's hard to get to us and for us to get to the markets. But also because then a country like Samoa is not in the normal shipping route. So you'll have to go to Singapore, come to Fiji before coming home, and so forth. So those are some of sort of like the physical constraints that are faced in maritime connectivity, and it does therefore affect the trade, the trade in our country. My comments as well are going to be mainly based on the experience of Samoa, because that's what I know best, I guess. Now, just picking up on the e-commerce discussion, and this is following up from the session I had yesterday, and some of you may have been in that session. I think one of the things that came through clearly in the discussion, especially the presentations, is that the infrastructure, which is something that ADB, the World Bank, and others have been really focusing on in the Pacific, is getting there. And the issues of accessibility, affordability, are it's coming around. So sooner or later the question was then posed. It's not how to get it, but what do you do once you've got it? So we've got all these cables now coming into the Pacific. We're getting all these internet, the internet connections all sorted. But what do we do? And that, I guess, that's what this session is for. Is what next? And that's something as well. Then we're now sort of like moving into with ADB, is starting to look at the application side of ICT. We're in Samoa, as part of the cable project that I'm looking after. We're also helping the Ministry of Health put in a health management information system, which is now sort of like looking at, and in Tonga we're looking at mHealth, some other e-health, and likewise in education. So looking at application side onto the social sector, on the social sector. So so that's something that came through yesterday, and sooner or later the issue of whether our connections are good, whether it's affordable, it's accessible, is no longer going to be, it's going to be a non-issue. So I think now is the time to now then start looking at what we need to do to prepare ourselves for when it finally happens. Not wait until it's here and it takes us another year, 2 years to get to where we are. But now is the time to start thinking like that. Now, Deborah asked an interesting, and I didn't know Deborah was going to be one of the panelists today when she asked this question yesterday, that why are businesses not picking it up? And I think one of the things she spoke about just now is, why are we not developing websites that does the job, that advertises for us and attract people to come, and then allow us to also use those websites to do transactions. I think there was a paper that was prepared for us for this panel, And there was a box in there, a colleague of ours who's now with ADBI, they did a website of 300 businesses in Samoa on websites like, whether, a number of visibility, how visible, and they can be used for analytics and user experience. And I think what they found is that these websites were very, very, very simple. It could not do what any other sophisticated website do. And that really points to a big issue is capacity. Because I think the Pacific, there's very limited capacity to develop these kind of websites that allow you to interact and do these transactions online. So that's one thing, and I think it's something we can look at developing the capacity to do that, or also have access to what's available online. Because I think there is, a lot of online website developers that can help, and so forth. But just people not having the information and not having, not knowing about those kind of things. So, that's one thing. I think Deborah also mentioned the payment system, and there is limited, the backup, the support that financial services in the Pacific, and I think this was one thing that came up time and time yesterday, is that a lot of the banks in our countries do not offer credit cards facilities on personal. So if you're ordering something from Amazon, or or trying to pay a subscription to you can't do it because your bank doesn't give you a credit card to do it. They give you a debit card, but it just means you have to put money in your account. And in the Pacific, with all the family lovers you have, having a savings of 100,000, let alone 1,000, is a big ask. So that's a real limitation that I found, having lived in Manila and moving back to Samoa, and that I went to my bank and say, oh, sorry, we can't give you a credit card. So now I'm sort of like asking Emma again for another job back in Manila. So that's the other thing, is that I think we do need to work on the supporting services, like the financial services that supports businesses to be able to access. I've talked about limited capacity, but I think one thing, and as a Samoan, as a Pacific Islander, I think one thing, and the issue of privacy and cybersecurity came up a lot yesterday, but I tell you, it's a mentality thing for us, because I still see a lot of long lines at the banks, because even the ATM, people don't trust the ATM. So it's a lot of awareness building that needs to be done so that people trust enough to use, to do internet banking, to go to the ATM machine and use a card to take out money. People like going and standing at the, for hours sometimes in the line to go to a teller, because you hand over your money or you hand over the withdrawal slip and they give you your money. And it's a transaction that you see happening. And that's a mentality thing, and that's an awareness thing that I think people don't really think much about. But it does tie to that privacy thing and the cybersecurity thing, that people think that people will know everything about you once you start using the internet and be online. And I spoke about the internet access affordability, but as I said, that's something that's starting to come around now for the Pacific, and I think sooner or later, we're going to be up there with everyone else in terms of having that. One of the things as well that when we were asked yesterday is that a lot of the transactions businesses will do is with the government, and a lot of our governments have very underdeveloped e-government systems. So for example, for customs, instead of you personally have to go and pay your income duties, you can't do it online. You can't fill in your forms online. And likewise with everywhere else that you have to pay fees, the government's e-government is very unsophisticated at the moment, that you don't have that, and you can't do those just yet. So there's also that side of things, that it's not available. It's just not available. And one of the things I found with internet banking in Samoa, like when I try to pay like my water bill online, and then I get a call the next day and they say, oh, you're in arrears. And I say, well, I paid yesterday. And they say, well, it takes about a week before it shows up in our system. Or I say, well, and they said, yeah, the best thing for you is to actually go down to Water Authority and actually hand over the cash. And I said, well, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having internet banking. You know, that I can sit up in my nice air-conditioned office and just press a button and it goes. So those kind of things as well. I mean, these are systems issues. These are issues with, again, e-government and, again, the banking system that we need to resolve. Now, let me finish off by then talking about opportunities. You know, it opens up, you know, having this ICT infrastructure, having capacity, it opens up, you know, opportunities for us. Now, I can proudly say that Samoa is the first country in the world that sees the sun since we changed our timeline from 24 hours before. And we're sort of like, we're 5 hours ahead of mostly everywhere else in the world, in Asia. We can take advantage of being, while everyone else is asleep, we're doing all their work for them. You know, we can have call centers. We speak English very well, so, you know, if you ring, you know, we can handle any, you know, so those are the kind of opportunities, as Deborah said, that it's there. You know, we can you know, start looking at building on those. And I think rather than waiting until the cable land in Samoa in December and then start thinking about what we need to do to use it, this is the time to do it. And I'm excited to be in this space, and I'm excited to be back home at this time to do this. And I'm kind of nervous that if the cable doesn't land in December, they may pull my passport or something like that. But there's a lot riding on that for us because, you know, everyone says, oh, once that's on board, then everything. But there's a lot of work for us to do as well before that. I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Maria. So very nice perspective. I think you've heard three really interesting perspectives, but in case you're feeling deprived of something up on the screen, Michelle will satisfy that particular craving or need. Michelle, over to you.
Just to be different, I did a presentation. So, Bula Vinaka, Maloa Lele, Talofa, hello to you all. And thanks to Asia Development Bank and the other sponsors for having me here today. It's great to get away from the cold winter in Auckland. I'm here representing Pacific Cooperation Foundation, or PCF, where I've worked for the past 2 years as a communications manager / project manager. But I manage the media internship program. And just to give you a bit of context about what we do, I've just done a bit of a thing here. So I first came into contact with PCF when I applied for a grant to go to Palau to do a story on the National Marine Reserve that they've created there. Which is one of our programs that we did do. We don't do it anymore. But and this is a bit of a disclaimer. I'm no technology expert or economist at all. I'm a journalist, so that's what I write stories. And so, whoops, sorry. So I'm a journalist with a passion for all things Pacific. My grandmother stems from Malwhanga and Tonga, and so working as part of PCF. Which strives to create a prosperous Pacific, has been enlightening for me. But I also feel my work there has been in honour of my nana, who was a social worker and a supporter of Pacific rights in New Zealand. PCF is an independent partnership between public and private sectors in New Zealand and other Pacific Island countries. It is a not-for-profit organisation funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, or MFAT, and other regional organisations and the private sector. It aims to strengthen partnerships in both public and private sectors, sharing knowledge and expertise to promote prosperous businesses and communities in the Pacific. It's quite convoluted. PCF has 4 focus areas, which are up here: opportunities, and connections. We work with various partners in New Zealand and throughout the Pacific. information, we are trying to be the hub of information, the place where to go for contacts and resources within the region, and we run initiatives to achieve to promote cooperation for sustainable economic development in the Pacific. And so one of these initiatives is Grow Pacific e-commerce training for Pacific businesses. Established in 2015, the Grow Pacific project provides training, services, and support to Pacific businesses and organisations on utilising digital platforms such as websites, social media, to generate sales as well as manage and grow your own business. PCF facilitated the project with the assistance from PIPSO, based here in Suva, but it was led by Growth HQ's James Kemp, and so there's James on the left with our CEO Mac Luanai on the right, and one of our participants, Brian Mungy, in the middle there from Solomons. So James has spent the last decade helping e-commerce sites, online retailers, media companies, NGOs and startups build growth systems to grow sales and increase revenue in 7 countries. And he recently drove the growth and development of e-commerce service GrabOne as their marketing director. And GrabOne is one of New Zealand's third largest online retailer with sales over 100 million New Zealand dollars. So and so as you can see, the Pacific is massive. It leaves its resident island nations geographically isolated, and so it's been realised businesses located in the Pacific need unique resources and skills if they are to compete in a world where the pace of change and innovation is accelerating, which you've just heard. And so PCF sees connectivity and technology as tools to help eliminate the great divide between Pacific nations and the rest of the world. In recent years, PCF has had a focus on equipping Pacific businesses with ICT knowledge and skills, which enables businesses and their communities to grow while improving people's livelihoods and well-being, which is at the base of what PCF stands for. So working with James Kemp, the Grow Pacific project was developed. James established a framework to assist Pacific businesses become more competitive and to market their product or service on a global scale, but also within their, to a wider audience in their own country. PCF and James have helped over 100 SMEs start to implement this framework into their business at our 1 or 2 day workshops, which have been staged in Auckland, Fiji, Samoa, and the Cook Islands. Last year, Grow Pacific expanded to include a 10-week online training program pilot for women in business from countries around the Pacific, the first of its kind in the region. The workshops and online training have been funded by MFAT and UNDP. So as time goes on, we're starting to see some really positive and exciting results from the businesses who participated in the e-commerce training. Most of the SMEs have provided feedback, have seen improvements in their business from utilising social media, advertising a lot more, expanding their product lines, starting up or improving their websites. Many of them didn't have websites to begin with, as Deborah was saying before. So Alfred on the right from Alpha Fishing, he attended our Grow Pacific workshop, 2-day Grow Pacific workshop in Ngātadola Bay here in Fiji in 2015, and he's the chief executive of Alpha Fishing and had no idea about the impact technology would have on his and his village's life and people's life and well-being. The Vanuatu businessman was Alfred, who owns a community-led sustainable seafood business in Vanuatu, which generates income for rural youth and urban women through supplying fresh seafood to both high-end restaurants and low-income households, was one of 20 participants at this particular workshop. During the 2 days, participants learnt the value of interesting content on social media forums such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, a modern and up-to-date website, and online marketing strategies. James showed participants on how these things could help their business grow and attract a wider and potentially global market. So since attending Grow Pacific and implementing various strategies learnt at the workshop, Alfred says his business, he's been in contact with us obviously, is receiving far wider recognition in the Pacific. So Alpha Fishing has clearly identified what type of ICT method is most suitable and effective to use for each segment of its audience. Advertising has been far more effective through social media, and there has been an increased demand for Alpha Fishing products and services. Sales revenues is up by approximately 60%, while partnership relations have also improved. Alfred has created a Facebook page. He didn't have one to begin with. He's created a Facebook page and uses other social media to spread news and updates about his business. There is still scope to grow, but word is getting out there about Alpha Fishing. He's only got 486 likes, but coming from nothing, that's better than nothing. In late November 2015, Alpha Fishing won an award in the growth stage category at the Fish 2.0 competition finals and Sustainable Seafood Innovation Forum in the United States. Last year Alpha Fishing was featured in a National Geographic Oceans View article where it was touted as having a sustainable fishing model the rest of the world could potentially use. For Alfred, Grow Pacific has been hugely beneficial in helping gain more recognition to tell his story to the world. And James and that Growth HQ team keep in regular contact with Grow Pacific participants and allocate time to speak with them online, live, about their progress and marketing strategies. Participants can also touch base with the team at any time via email if they have issues, concern, or need advice about what's happening on their website or social media. As all businesses have different needs and goals, James and his team tailor their help and guidelines to suit individuals. A Grow Pacific Facebook has also been set up, especially for participants to keep informed and in contact with one another. And like Alpha Fishing, Menino Waters in Samoa and Arrow Enterprises in Fiji participated in the Grow Pacific training in Fiji, and the businesses have experienced positive outcomes. These businesses have utilised Grow Pacific services. They've joined the Facebook group and keep in regular contact with James and his team. And like many of the businesses that we have worked with, they either didn't have a Facebook page or website and have since started one, or they had one but they weren't utilising it, they weren't posting regularly, so it was virtually untouched. So Arrow Enterprises, or Tafui Nursery, a plant nursery in Nandi, has undergone a lot of changes since the workshop, and designing a new marketing strategy and introducing new product lines. Owner Liz Morris has increased advertising for her business. Business is more visible online through a Facebook page and advertising, and sales have increased 10 to 20% during the past 12 months. So she's had 32 reviews of 5 stars, so she's getting the word out there that she's pretty good. Menino Waters, a Samoa-based water company, has also had about a 20% increase in sales revenue since Grow Pacific in November 2015. Having made changes to their businesses, new employments, exporting products and introducing new products, as well as designing a new marketing strategy, have been some of these changes. They have also started regularly posting on social media, and have even started producing videos advertising their products, which are gaining a lot of traction. And if we've got time, I'll quickly show you this. Sorry.
Hot and so hot and so hot and oh, Kulani Prada.
Clear the blood with cold water. Bottle and distributed by Manila Waters.
So yeah, pretty basic, but it gets the point across. And so finally, PCF has experienced firsthand the positive effects of implementing Grow-Pacific strategies. We've used James's framework, and PCF is becoming recognised within the Pacific for the work it's doing, and it's becoming a place people turn to when they want to know what is happening in the region. That's our goal anyway. As a communications manager, I've implemented these strategies, so I've seen firsthand how effective they've been. When we first started the process, our communications goals at PCF were to spread the word about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and to become the go-to website for people in the region. So following James's advice, we started regularly posting on Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn. And as most of our audience is via Facebook, this has become a priority area. So I post about 3 to 5 relevant articles from various sources a day on Facebook. And I write about 4 or 5 articles a week about various things PCF is doing, or is involved with, or our partners are involved with, and these are posted on our website and then shared via social media, which drives traffic back to our website. Our website was completely overhauled, which my CEO and myself had, we drove that, and it was a pretty lengthy process, but very worthwhile. As a team, we nutted out what exactly PCF does and how it does it, with whom and why. And we now promote what is relevant to PCF in the Pacific and share information about various partners we collaborate with. We provide up-to-date daily regional news as well as PCF-generated news every week. We issue a weekly online newsletter featuring PCF and regional news, events and opportunities, which is emailed to a database of 2,714 people. That newsletter was monthly, but we've brought it back to weekly at James's suggestion, and we've started getting quite a lot of positive feedback from doing that. And through developing a new website, we've found the true essence of PCF, which was, it was quite an interesting process for our organisation. In 2 years, we've gone from 4,000 likes to 10,640 on Facebook, and while LinkedIn and Twitter are increasing a bit more slowly, but we have 249 followers on LinkedIn and 365 Twitter followers. Obviously, they're not so much a priority. So while Grow-Pacific has enabled the majority of participants to make positive changes the way they run their business, there are still many challenges in the Pacific when it comes to IT, as the other panellists have alluded to: poor infrastructure and internet connection, lack of access or not accessing technology, and relying on traditional methods to do business. So in conclusion, we've found Grow-Pacific is an effective tool in trying to bridge the digital divide with the Pacific, and with connectivity continuing to improve around the region with more infrastructure being installed, this type of training can continue to grow, expand and assist more Pacific businesses to achieve their potential, reach international markets and receive global recognition, we hope. And having been on this journey with PCF implementing the Grow-Pacific strategies, I really think it has a lot of relevance for the SMEs throughout the Pacific. Yeah, so if anyone has any queries about the program or any strategies, I'm happy to help. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Michelle. I think we'll open up for questions. Just very brief, I think, reflection on what the panelists have said. Aranda started off by discussing maritime transport and trade and reflecting on the challenges that maritime transport is faced with right now. There's a lot of push in terms of privatization of state-owned enterprises, including ports. That is against the backdrop of slowing maritime trade growth. It's been dropping very sharply. If you've been watching things about the consolidation of the shipping industry, that's the backdrop to his comments. And he made some reflections about what that would mean for various services that ports are supposed to offer, including navigational and safety issues. And then Debbie Elm spoke to the fact that so ICT infrastructure is being built, but why is it not really being fully utilized for digital trade and e-commerce, and that this part of the world would be a classic region for that. And she laid out a strong call for that. Maria gave us a very nice Samoan perspective about the kind of issues that may be constraining opportunities, everything partly from capacity on websites through to online payment systems and other constraints, but also really the kind of opportunities that were out there. And lastly, I think from Michelle, you heard a little bit about how PCF is trying to help businesses use the access to the new digital connectivity that's being built more robustly, whether it's examples like alpha phishing, etc. So with that, let me throw this open to you for questions for them. Yes.
I take this opportunity to thank the panel. You guys were fantastic in your discussions and your explanations. I have actually a few comments for what Deborah has said. So if I'm wrong, do correct me. So when we talk about e-commerce businesses in Fiji, and you have stated that why there isn't an increasement of opportunities, and why can we not make e-payments and websites. So firstly, what we have a self-regulating guideline for e-commerce businesses in Fiji. It was launched on May 20th after a second revision of it. And there it provides a guideline as to how e-commerce businesses in Fiji can actually facilitate it so that it can reach a greater audience. And there's also a vision for Fiji's information economy, and I just read what it says. It says to harness Fiji's ideal geographic location, competent workforce, and world-class information technology infrastructure to promote Fiji's international competitiveness and create a dynamic, vibrant, and well-connected e-society. Also, we do have websites where by tourists who come, they can visit these websites, and they can actually do reservations, such as Skydive Fiji. We also have the Nava River Safari. You can also make payments. I'm not sure about payments, but you can make reservations. And regarding how Fiji has traditional handicrafts that we can sell, the major problem here is that we need some sort of information centers for them to actually go and get training, because I understand that these people who do carvings and all are actually people who are in the mature category of ages, so they do not really know how much to expand businesses. So we, in Fiji, we need to have some sort of workshops that can give them greater knowledge on that. And furthermore, we also have Pure Fiji, so it has lotions and shampoos and stuff that's actually made in Fiji from materials such as coconut and hibiscus that is actually available worldwide, and you can find them in America and England, New Zealand, Australia also. So another thing also is that for digital spaces to happen, we need those qualifications. And I think what we lack over here is we don't have graphic designers, we don't have people who are very much into creating websites, and also we have people from Fiji who operate online businesses, but the major catch here is that we make payments to them, but they're not able to supply goods to us. And this is, I think, many people who do online businesses or they purchase items face these problems. And there has been a major case in Fiji, namely the Desi Fashion House trading as the Fashion Palace of Fiji. We've got Pink Window Creations where they're not able to supply. So we have businesses, but due to them not being able to supply us, we're not able to do that. And also payments. I understand BSP has a debit card system. We don't have a credit card system. And unless you're working, you cannot obtain a credit card. So I think that also plays a major problem in that. I mean, Fiji is working towards a greater e-commerce society, but we need to have implementations done and also workshops that can actually encourage it, because I think we lack the knowledge and the skill also. But I mean, if I've said something wrong, I do apologize, but that's all my comments on that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's excellent news. I mean, clearly the payment system has to be sorted, but it doesn't need to just be sorted in Fiji. It needs to be sorted, I think, across the region. For making websites, I mean, we can have an argument about this, but I think there are plenty of places already that make websites. So I don't think we need to create an entire generation of website designers. We could do that, but I think there are plenty of off-the-shelf website designers that are available. Of course, the challenge is the payments issue, but let me just give you one. Our website is run by a place called Squarespace out of the US. Now you have to get past the payments problem because it's a US thing, but I think it's $10 a month. It is the easiest website you can possibly imagine. Anyone can use it. You can set up your own website in less than 2 hours. It's mobile enabled, so whatever you set up as your website, it's automatically mobile enabled, which is crucial because in this day and age. If you have a website that doesn't work on a mobile device, forget it. It would solve one of the problems that many of the study that you had showed, that we have lots of websites that are dreadful because they're not picked up by all of the scanners and so forth. But Squarespace is automatically picked up by that. So you don't have to have any web design experience at all, no graphic design experience. You can just go to Squarespace. It registers your domain name, and it gives you your website, and it's mobile enabled, and it costs you almost nothing, and anyone can use it. So this is the kind of thing that is already available. We don't have to train up a whole generation of people in computer coding to create websites, and you don't have to spend a fortune on it. There are other sites like that globally that you can use. Many of them are free. So it's not that we have to have a big pool of people who know how to do this. You just have to go find the right sources, and maybe we do have to have workshops to point out where they are. Or you don't even need to have your own website. It would be great. But you can also use Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. You can use all of these, again, free accounts. You just have to have a presence. And I think that that is the first start. And then websites and so forth. Squarespace also has the analytics attached to it, so you can see who's coming to your website from where. It allows you to have sales directly, but you don't have to do that either. You can also put yourself on other people's platforms. So there's a lot of things that you can do where you don't have to create this from scratch. There are a million online websites, platforms, retailers, etc., who have come before you. So you don't have to start from ground zero. You can put yourself on other people's platforms, other people's already developed tools, other people's already developed lots of different things. I don't think you have to start from the beginning, and that's, I think, very important. And that allows you to create products and services rather than create websites. unless someone wants to specialize in website development. Now, it may be the case that you have to have certain short periods of training to get that kind of information into the hands of the individuals who are, I don't know what, carving whatever beautiful things they're carving, or create an industry association that does it on their behalf, or create some other grouping that does that for certain groups of individuals. But we're not supposed to be reinventing the wheel here. Let someone else deal with the tech issues, you deal with your business. Because the point of this is you do beautiful whatever it is that you do, get on with that, let someone else deal with the back-end technology. You don't need to be involved in all of that.
Thanks very much. Yes, please. Oh, yeah, maybe gentleman back there, and then we'll have a question from the front.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm Tony, Associate Professor at School of Computing, USP. This is my second week at USP. I was from Brisbane. I trained around half a dozen good, talented students from Samoa. I don't know what happened to them. They are pretty sure they are back in home. They are not back in Brisbane, I'm 100% guarantee. So, taking from Maria's comments as a case scenario, let's start from yesterday's session. We stopped somewhere. We talk about leadership. Let's say given the leadership is available, hopefully, the connectivity here is social context. Programming, website design is pretty much for us is like grade 6 work. High school student can put up a website within half an hour. It's not the point. The point is it possible for the social context, somebody who to put up with a website, and what is the website good to do with their social context? That is where the missing point. If the leadership comes in, the connectivity is available, why we want to connect this? What is the business case? I'll give you another example. I withdrew the money from ANZ ATM last week using my credit card, Australian National Bank. Last night I checked my statement. ANZ Bank charged me $9. National Australia Bank back in Brisbane charged me $22. Same transaction. This is where the anxiety and the culture of the people thinking, all right, why I don't do the things I do as normal? Why I need a website? So the value co-creation got to be explicit, giving them the value, why need that to do it? Recently I read there was a strategy in Solomon Island. There are capside of transport, all of a sudden there are 13 or 20 odd people life loss. So the reason is there is no enough capital, no communication. It is very sad. There are people around other part of the world throwing around $1,000 worth of food per year, while 8 million kids are around the world without a meal per day. So there are something not working together. Even leadership comes in, the connectivity is there. We don't see the connection. So I'm coming from highly tech side, but I keep the tech side for some time. See the social side. This is where the disconnection. So I don't know how it can be solved through Samoa. If you can send me another half a dozen students, I can train them a couple of years, I'll send them back. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe before Maria answers, we'll take a few, because maybe one from the front, and then there's a gentleman in the back. Yeah.
Okay, mine is quite simple. It's on. We've been talking about e-commerce, online, etc. And all of us know that there is such thing as an ATM, and all of us know what you can do with the ATM. It's a one-way traffic. You can draw out money. My question is, there must be a solution, and somebody should innovate something else to the reverse of that. The poor farmers, the fishermen, after their sales, what do they do with the money? Keep it in their pocket, they can lose it, go to the bar, they can spend it, but if they can bank it, then that's good for the family. So there is no, at the present time, there is no provision for banking, but there is provision for withdrawing After hours, I'm not talking about our working hours. Working hours, okay, fine, you can go to the bank. What about after hours?
Okay, so we'll get to that for sure, and then we'll take. There'll be another round. Don't worry. So we'll take one. Yes, please, gentleman, right there, and then you'll be in the next round. Yes, please, sir.
Thank you. My name is Morgan Wairiu. I'm with the Pacific Center for Environment and Sustainable Development here at USP. I would like to thank the panelists for giving us the insight into this digital connectivity and the role of maritime transport in facilitating, enhancing trade. It's been encouraging to see the opportunities that digital technology provide. And especially I see a role in maritime transport in moving goods from point A to B in terms of the trade. But if you, on the other side, if you look at the current climate global projections, the maritime transport sector is going to emit about at a rate of 200% carbon emissions in the next 50 years. While the Pacific countries, as well as the small island development states, are at the forefront of calling for reducing global average temperature to 1.5 degrees. Now, how do we do this balancing act while trying to support the livelihood of our population, but at the same time, trying to ensure that we avoid sinking of our islands? I would like to hear a reaction from the panelists on that.
Wow, three great questions. The first one, I think, very much directed on Samoa, so maybe Maria will have a go at that. The second one from Humphrey on kind of how the online, how the banking system is operating, maybe one-way ATM, if I've understood it correctly, one-way ATM deposits, but no ability to, one-way ATM withdrawals, but no ability to deposit into the banking system in the same way. Maybe Debbie will take that one. And then a last really great question on ports and maritime transport, given the fact that the Pacific is leading the charge on climate change impacts and the impacts of that. And maybe Aranda will take that. By the way, Humphrey, I come from a country that demonetized, where we couldn't use our ATMs for a while. Big problem, but anyway, well, that's a different conversation. So Aranda first. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. Now, I mean, if you look at the maritime, world maritime trade, I mean, 90% of actually the cargo is moved through shipping, I mean, through the ships. So, I mean, there's increased number of, vessels being built. But if you look at the recent trends and as well as the growing trends actually in the maritime transport sector, the ships are getting bigger. I mean, in the past, actually, we had many ships, and even, of course, actually in the Pacific, we still find many ships have been, circulating actually within the region. The ships are getting bigger, and the bigger ships can transport, a higher volume of containers. So then, rather than a number of ships moving from point A to B. But further, but now, of course, actually, the climate change, the rising sea level is a, big question. I'm like concern to most of the Pacific island, like ours, actually in the Fiji, Solomon Islands, PNG, and Tonga, some actually all the Pacific countries. The IMO and as well as the maritime sector is also actually trying to understand how actually this can be reduced. I mean, in the future, by also looking at some of the technological developments in terms of moving ships actually to of course driving ships through the use of renewable energy and liquefied liquefied gas, which is called the LNG, the liquefied natural gas. Plus, also actually looking at, the use of solar energy actually. But of course, it's a long way ahead. I mean, when to power, huge 18,000 container or a 12,000 container vessel through renewable energy, it's a big challenge right now. So the industry is looking at many ways of doing it, efficiently as possible. In order also to reduce the carbon emissions. Because as we understand, the bigger ships, I mean, the size really doesn't matter, but whether actually a small ship or a big ship, of course, actually level of carbon emissions is there. But so the industry is looking at this challenge, very effectively, and how we can collectively look at, ways of reducing the carbon emissions through bigger ships, and also in the through the, that happens actually through the maritime sector. But of course, the Pacific, the country is actually, going to be affected because of, the large amount of, the vessels moving around. But in the fact that, it's a longer way ahead, the technological development to reduce, the emissions, plus, the development of, renewable energy, and that can power large ships or even smaller ships. But it's a big question mark right now, and how it's going to affect us actually in the Pacific. But through the development of ICT, of course, I don't see, a huge impact in terms of actually, how it can reduce the emissions. But of course, actually, what Deborah actually mentioned, a few minutes ago, the access to markets, through online systems, like even online purchase actually, and also sending goods, through different means, of course, actually will help to actually reduce a certain level of, carbon emissions, and also reduce actually the emissions from bigger ships, traveling from continent to continent actually in a very frequent manner. But obviously it's quite a challenging stuff, because now if you look at the cost of aviation, even transporting goods through airlines, it's very costly compared to the sending goods through ships. So this is a big question right now the industry is facing. But parallelly, actually, lots of industries like big companies like Maersk, Costco, actually they are also looking at, even NYK, looking at ships actually being powered by renewable energy in the future to minimize the carbon emissions, and also actually to make it much more leaner and greener in the future.
It seems clear to me that your financial sector needs significant changes, because it's too expensive, it's too difficult, it's way too time consuming or flat out impossible, and so clearly your financial sector needs to be upended. The good news is that disruption is coming quite rapidly to financial services across the globe, and it will eventually come here as well. So you will have changing financial services, I assume, in the relatively short term. So you should have the ability to do things like deposit money outside of office hours, to transfer money instantly, to have money deposited to your account from overseas, to pay for things very soon. But it will also require some concerted collective action. So you all need to get together and solve this, because this is ridiculous. You should not have payments problems in 2017. This should be sorted out. On the trust issue, this is a problem that a lot of customers have, and so for inbound purchases, so I'm not talking about outbound now, where you're selling something overseas, where you're assuming that your outbound customers are comfortable buying online, because a lot of most of the rest of the world now is relatively comfortable buying online, and they would probably love to buy your whatever lotions, whatever it is. They'll buy. They're not worried about trust. But inbound, you're still going to have some trust issues. There are ways to solve this. Some of the ways that you can get around this for buying from one another, for example, would be to set up where you send things, for example, to the local convenience stores, and the convenience stores hold the goods. You pay in cash when you go to the convenience store. So that kind of system has been tried out in lots of different places, including Singapore, including lots of places within Southeast Asia. That could be done here for resolving the local trust issues until confidence gets built up among consumers about buying online. So I buy something, it goes to the store, I pay for, or a store, a post office, a convenience store, something like that, and you pay for cash when you pick up the item. So there are ways around the trust issue for buying inbound delivery. But I think it doesn't take very long, generally, for consumers to get comfortable with the idea of buying things online. Once you realize what's available, how quickly it can be delivered, the kinds of things, the product range, the cost savings, people tend to convert remarkably fast towards the idea of buying things online. And I think you would find, again, if we could sort out this payments problem, you would find people switching remarkably quickly to the idea of buying online, and I think that would get sorted out quite quickly.
Thanks. I know. I'm glad Tony got the chance to ask his question again, because yesterday we kind of had to cut you off because we were running out of time. Before I do answer Tony's question, can I just something on Humphrey, because this is something that's dear to my heart. The mobile, the ATM, I totally agree, because when I used to work for the Small Business Enterprises Center, that was one of the biggest issue my clients in the one end of Savai'i that doesn't have access to banking, facilities had, is that he ended up spending the money because he didn't have anywhere to put it, So the temptation to spend it was too great. But one of the things the ANZ did do, but they don't do it anymore, is they used to have this mobile banking where they go around, the villages. They have a truck that goes around and collects deposits from people in the rural, but they don't do that anymore, I understand as well. So, but I have seen deposits in ATMs in New Zealand, and so I think it's coming as they proceed. Hopefully it will get here very, very soon. Just then, on Tony's question, I think the first thing I wanted to answer, I do not know where that Samoan kid is, probably married to a Tongan and they've gone to Tonga. But on the other hand, you're right. There is, capacity is building, and a lot of one of the things that I do know is happening is that they become very marketable. So they end up, like Samoa has this quota system where they go to New Zealand. Like there's 1,100 Samoans that can get New Zealand citizenship and go. And one of the big, sort of like sector that's been picked up is in ICT. So a lot of these kids, would have the opportunity to then use that to go. So they become quite marketable, and then they're not, just leave the country pretty much. I think I spoke earlier about this disconnect. One of the things, we have strong leadership, and I think that was in Ian's presentation yesterday. Like, it came from the top, the leaders meeting, this call for us to, for ICT. And then we've got all the infrastructure, all in place, and, capacity is picking up. But, I think it's change management. That's what Ian said. It's about change management. It's not about ICT. And I think I spoke earlier about this change in mentality of people to trust ICT. And you spoke about showing the value of having a website. I think that's something that still, people are not. And I think some of the work that, as Michelle mentioned, that PCF is doing, I think once people started seeing, that it's picking up, like there's a change, even a small change in their business, because they do, something like develop a very good website. And I think we've heard from Deborah that it doesn't need to cost a lot, and it doesn't need to have a pure website developer. You can, there's ways that you can do it now. But as I said as well, there is limited knowledge that kind of support, is available. And I think there's a lot of work, and it needs to be a collective effort between the government, the private sector, and and partners, about to make sure that message is getting out there. Now, I've noticed some real interesting stuff happening in Samoa, and it's actually through Facebook. There's a lot of what they call marketing online, which is like market online, and I'm seeing a lot of people using that to advertise, to advertise things, and it's all on Facebook. Everyone, and if one thing that every Samoan knows how to use, it's Facebook. So, you use the mechanism that's available. So people are using more Facebook rather than using websites. They'll go online on Facebook. A very good friend of mine just opened a new business last year. It's called Makeki Samoa, and what he does is he arranges, like, we have a lot of these family, funerals and our families in New Zealand can order. So he's got like 25 businesses that he's got signed up to his market. And so your family in New Zealand can order how many boxes of tin fish, how many boxes of, to use for your family, like a funeral or something, and they'll pay for it. So they make the payment and to him, like online, and then he goes with the cash and actually to each of the shop, do your shopping for you and deliver it. And that, I thought that was such a very nice, innovative thing that he was able to, so it's becoming a really nice business for him. So there's pockets of things happening, but as I said, there's the trust issue that people, need to trust to use, the internet. and use ICT what's available. And there's also, I think, still a lack of information, a lack of awareness of what's available. And I think this thing that as soon as you say use ICT, they say, oh, it's going to cost an arm and a leg. But I think having information available, as Deborah said, that there's a lot of ways you can do it at very minimum cost. But that information is not flowing out there. And we'll send some more Samoans for you to train. Hopefully not find girlfriends to go away somewhere else. Thank you.
Gentleman back there has been very, very patient, so thank you for bearing with us. Please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I got about 2 statements and maybe 2 questions. Firstly, for the banking, from a private sector, we have banking after hours. There's a box which you put your slip and your plastic and you seal it and you drop it in. It's available in Fiji. Westpac and NZ has it. So Humphrey, you can use that. And also the banks is available if you have village meetings, village gatherings, and they are available to come and see you and do your banking on the spot. After hours, weekends. That's for the banking. For the ICT, I was one of the founding members of an ISP provider in Fiji. We were also working on getting a holding warehouse. Unfortunately, 2006 came and it just finished. We have a big problem in regards to security of the IP addresses. In Fiji or in the Pacific, you cannot buy using credit card because your IP address that you are buying from is located to the whole nation. So when they're sending your thing, they're sending it to Fiji Islands or Fuji Mountain. So that's the problem. If we can, because right now Fiji is behind by about 10 years in activating a IP6. The only place that's IP6 is in the University of the South Pacific. The rest are not IP6 driven ISPs. So this again, the question that I want to ask ADB, what is the plan of ADB in regards of connectivity by making the countries, the Pacific, become IP6 and be able to trade using our own cards, not credit cards, but cash cards, and having a holding warehouse? This is the question. We might have the best looking website and the best thing, but if we can't trade, and if you can't have the security or the location where the banks can actually put the person with the IP addresses, we really can't do anything. Thank you. Oh, it'll be part of our manifesto coming next year for Sudelpa.
Okay, so I think this is an easy question. So I'll Maria, you. Okay, so I'll have an initial go at answering the incredibly good question, and maybe Debbie, you'll have some thoughts too. We've been aware for some time that amongst the range of challenges that e-commerce is faced with, we're trying to get a sense of where the challenges are in different parts of the region, and they vary, right? Everything from levels of internet penetration to logistics issues, and one of the issues which has come up a little bit is domain names. It's never come up in as acute a form as you're describing, so it seems very, very acute here. I will tell you that we are proposing a benchmark e-commerce study across different parts of the region to figure out what the most binding constraint for that part of the region is. And the reason we want to do this is we want to connect up e-commerce markets, for example, between the Pacific and other parts of the region. So if it turns out that that issue, IP address specific, not general to the country, is one of the most binding constraints, well, hopefully the study will throw that up, right? Debbie, any thoughts from you in terms of best practice?
Well, that's a peculiar, I mean, normally when you have a domain name problem, so this domain name is where is your computer located, but normally your domain name problem is different. Normally it is someone registers your address, like in my case it's asiantradecenter.org, right? So someone registers that address, and once they own it, you can't have it, right? So normally that's what the domain name problem is, that they own it and you can't now have it, and there's no way for you to get it or change it because they've now gone out of business and that name has been taken and you can't get it. That's normally what we talk about, but you're talking about the IP address for the computer. Yes, I know, you need the IP address for the computer.
The IP addresses is a different thing,
Right,
and
right.
the domain names is a
Is
different. You
a
can
different
register
thing.
your domain name in Russia,
Yes, but you
and
need the
you need it
computer
here.
address.
So you need to put an address, and the
Right.
address is the IP address. Or you
That
can have it
is-
in the moon, but you still need an IP address to locate it.
That is
That's how
the strangest problem I've ever heard of. I mean, normally when we talk about, that's the thing people worry about, but you have an unusual one
This
I have
is,
never heard
I'm
of.
talking from an ISP, Internet Service
Yes,
Provider.
exactly.
So I'm trying to inform you
Yes,
that we are talking about the nice, good color, but
Yes.
what is connected in the back
yes,
is
you
a
have
little
a
bit.
wholly different, never heard of it before as a
Okay,
problem.
maybe.
This should be fixed.
This is the main problem, because unless we get these IP addresses,
Yes,
the banks will not be able to transfer accounts, or the purchaser will not be able to allocate.
is that only in Fiji?
No, the whole of the Pacific.
The whole of the,
It's in Pacific, it's in Africa, it's all the countries that are not aligned with IP6. This is the new IP addressing that allocates to your MAC address for every computers, that makes you become located to wherever you are purchasing. This has been here for about 10 years. It's not new. It's an old thing.
well, that's unusual, but that needs to be sorted out.
Yes, and it's just the domain name is just the name. It translates to
Right.
an IP address. Thank you. Oh, some places they call it static IP.
This is a case of us being educated by you, not the other way around. Yes, I'm conscious that we're entering the last couple of minutes, so one more. I guess.
Help
Yeah.
you, the panel, not to bog down in the technical issue. Deborah, that issue is a commercial issue. ISP is the business value issue. It's a highly technical, but in South Pacific, even in Australia, there are places where still IP4 and IPv6 is a little bit expensive. So coming back to the Asian and South Pacific ISP providers, this is where yesterday we discussed here around the submarine cable project, which is $1,500 for 1 gigabytes. It's a massive, but it may go down. I'm not sure it's 2020 or 2030, lucky 2040, maybe 2050. So Deborah, you and me will build gold then. Sorry, that's what happened.
I mean, clearly you have a regulatory challenge. You have regulatory challenges. And one of the problems you often have is you don't have the capacity for regulatory challenges like this. And you need to have clearly a dialogue with the commercial sector and the public sector, because the public sector is not going to know many of these technical issues because they're not in that area. They have no idea. So unless you have a format or a forum in which you have the commercial sector providing input to the public sector, you can't solve many of these regulatory issues. It's not just here, it's everywhere. But it's particularly acute in places where the public sector is not familiar with what the commercial sector challenges are. This comes up over and over again. So you have to have a forum or a format in which you allow comments, and not just, I would argue, from your local private sector, but from foreign operators who might also have something useful to contribute, because they can give you feedback that could be very useful. Why would you reinvent the wheel when this clearly exists elsewhere? You need to allow some kind of comment period, open public comment period, in which you put that out and you get comments from, you have no idea where, but it can come in from everywhere, who can provide useful feedback on technical issues precisely like this one, so that you're not trying in every single one of these relatively small states with relatively limited capacity, solve the problem again. It should be similar, it should be consistent, and this would sort out a number of these technical challenges that should have been solved ages ago.
Okay, Humphrey, I can sense you want to ask one more, and we are kind of at the end. Maybe you can ask them afterwards. I know they'll be willing. Thank you very, very much. I won't attempt to really sum this up except to say you've left us with a lot of food for thought in terms of not just looking at maritime transport through the lens of efficiency and safety, but also sustainability. You've left us with a lot of thoughts about the issues of e-commerce and how to make it work better in terms of public-private dialogue, in terms of addressing some of the policy and capacity issues. So we thank you for that, and I hope you will join me in thanking the members of the panel for their discussion.